Hi, this is Jeremy Schweitzer from GobySavvy. Today we're going to be doing a UX review for Poynter, which is a journalism website. So some of the things we looked at when we first started this review was journalism best practices in the UX space. There were a couple that we found, a bunch of articles. There's been a bunch of studies on the topic, so it was actually not too bad to find detailed information. So a couple of the headline writing and link writing best practices that we'll go over, and I'll pull these out as I go through the site. But headlines for the web should be short and concise. Studies show that users rarely read many words before moving on, so there's a lot of scanning going on from users. Headlines for the web should make the resulting click very obvious, so it should really be obvious to users what they're about to see when they click on a headline. When writing headlines, keywords should be front-loaded, again, because users scan content and they oftentimes don't read the entire headline. And then headlines should be understandable with no supporting context. Headlines often appear in search engines and search results, so it's really important that it's easy to understand what they mean even without photos or other supporting content. We also pulled some general articles and writing best practices in the news industry. And most of those have to do with the fact that studies show that users just simply scan pages. They don't really read pages word for word. So it's really important to do things like highlighting text, writing meaningful headings and subheadings, using bulleted lists where possible, and by using about half the word count of printed text counterparts. In other studies of news-related sites, users often read the brief description of an article before clicking through, so it's important that headlines are accompanied by brief descriptions. And then finally, the inverted pyramid style of writing is recommended for online news media, which is to say that the conclusion of an article should be first, and then supporting content comes after that. And then the last thing we found was that plain text is much better than tech-heavy or jargon-heavy text. Even for people who understand it, plain text is still much easier to scan. All right, so we'll get on with the review now. So this is the home page of Poynter. And one of the first things we see is the newsletter sign up. I think that's fine. It has a close button, which is great. One of the things, though, is that this nav at the top really feels like the main nav of the website. But if you start clicking on it, you'll actually get taken to other sites. Poynter, I think, is part of some kind of network of sites. And so I don't think the user would expect that these top-level nav items would take them to different sites. So I think I'd recommend that these would be put somewhere else. We finally get to the main nav down here. And the main nav is decent. I think how-tos is a little confusing. You're not really sure what you're going to get when you click that. Sort of how-tos about what. Media innovation, media wire. I think users can guess on what those mean, but it's probably could be a little bit more detail there. You can see that these headlines are pretty long, especially compared to the studies that we read. So I would definitely recommend more concise headlines. You can see callouts like this webinar callout, going deep in the digital age. The user really doesn't know what that means unless they click, so it's sort of causing them to have to click to find out what it means, and a lot of users just won't take the time. Another thing I noticed when I was reviewing this was that we have sort of news at the top and news at the bottom, and then this sort of disconnected training and events content in the middle. I think they should probably go towards the bottom and just news. All of this should be news here. It's a weird way to bisect the page. The social widgets on the left are good. They work pretty well. When you click them, they do as expected. They pull up the Facebook links or Twitter links, and LinkedIn links. The problem comes when the page is actually squeezed a little bit. These just disappear completely. So if your browser's not wide enough, you never actually see them. So it's definitely recommended that these always be there. If we move over to the sidebar, the support Poynter link, I think, looks a bit broken. We have this big margin to the right, and I'm not sure why that is. It just appears broken to me. I think it should either be full width or maybe centered in this area. But I think that can tend to look a little unprofessional. This featured jobs idea is a nice idea. I think the content is just automatically rotating, and it's actually going pretty fast. And so I think it would be much better if the content was just static and the user could scroll as necessary, or if there was pagination under the content, that would be fine too. And then finally, this looks like it's cut off at the bottom, this most popular area. I would recommend that this gray bar either continues down, or at least there be some padding underneath here, because right now I feel like it looks like a mistake. I'll scroll down the page a little bit. Now towards the bottom, we have this playlist, this video playlist for YouTube, but there's really no labeling around it and no description. So I really don't know why these videos are here or what the video content is. So I definitely recommend adding some description here or a call it of some kind to tell me what this is. I did load the page once, and the Facebook links, these were all broken images. Luckily, we're not getting that result now, but it's recommended that you take a look at that functionality because it did break for me on one occasion at least. The other thing I noticed was this Twitter widget, which is great. I think having the tweets is fine, but it sticks out below the rest of the content in this area, and I think that tends to make the page look a little broken as well. So just some, padding and symmetry would be great here. And then finally, we have a black headline here and a red headline here. It's a little confusing as to why the headline might be red. I think this ends up looking more like an ad, and users obviously are sort of trained to ignore ads. So I'd recommend that this just be a standard black link, especially since it's for a pretty important piece of functionality like supporting Poynter. It might even be a good idea to move some of this content higher up on the page if it's something that's really trying to be pushed. All right, so we'll go up here and click on MediaWire. So we find out that this page is basically a list of news articles and videos. And we have some sub-navigation here as well. So one of the first things we noticed was that some of these articles have separate share functionality, and it works actually differently from the share functionality over here. So it's definitely recommended that this use the same functionality as this. All of the sharing in the site should be consistent. Scrolling down, looking at the content, I think everything else looks pretty good. We do have some cases where there'll be a separate thumbnail along with a big image, and it's not really known why that is. I would just remove these thumbnails. I think it's redundant. I don't understand why it's there. I don't think users would understand why it's there. And it would save on load time probably too. Another thing is this big gap between the title and the author and date should be closed up. It could be confusing for users to see which content the title is associated with the big gaps like that. It doesn't always happen, but it does happen sometimes. Okay, we'll scroll back up. Something else on this page, the sub-navigation here, I think it makes sense for the most part. We have Baltimore and Nepal earthquake, and those are sort of current events, which makes sense. But then we break off into job news, business, and writing, which seem like more general access, so it might be a good idea to move those into a separate bucket. And then we just have a name, Ed Sherman, And I don't think that name is going to mean anything to most users unless they happen to know who Ed Sherman is. And at any rate, it makes the user sort of wonder why this is here. So clicking it would reveal that it's basically a way to search for all articles written by Ed Sherman. But I think that's confusing, and it should probably go under a section that's devoted just for searching by a journalist. All right, we'll switch over to media innovation. So we see here it's the same type of page. We have more sub-navigation, and again, a list of links and stories. And in fact, some of the same stories, which makes you wonder a little bit why these are different navigation names, because we know we saw this story on the other page. So it's definitely recommended that we don't have redundant content throughout the site. If there's redundant content, it probably means that the navigation should be redesigned. We have job news here, which we also saw under MediaWire. So again, redundant navigation here. That should probably be removed. And another name, which makes me think even more that it would be better to have a separate section that allows users to search by journalist. And then mobile and video, it doesn't really tell the user what to expect here. Like sort of what about mobile is this going to be? So if we click through, we find out that it's mobile media. So the title of the section should probably be mobile media and not mobile, or something similar. Another issue on these sort of lower down pages is that you see that the sub-navigation has disappeared completely. So the problem becomes, I can't switch to other pages in this section, for one, and two, it might be easy for users to get confused as to where they are in the site, because you can see there's nothing selected here, and there's no really indication of where they are in the structure of the site. That especially would be a problem if users got to a page like this from a search engine where they would really not know what was going on at that point. They would just land on a page and not really understand how that page relates to the rest of the site. More links. I think we've covered most everything here. We'll switch over to how-tos. So again, we have the sub-navigation here. We find out that how-tos, story analysis, seminars, journalism, education, visuals, writing, and advice. So it's basically talking about content that helps people be journalists. Now, I don't think, again, that was super obvious just from the words how-tos, so that could be made a little bit more obvious. Otherwise, this just tutorial content I think is pretty decent. I don't see anything beyond what I've already covered that's an issue here. Again, news media best practices about headlines, amount of text, I think is decent for most of these articles, but it's definitely something that should always be looked at. Okay, we're going to do a quick search. And so obviously a big problem, the search just simply doesn't work. That's the third or fourth time it's failed for me, so I'm pretty much led to conclude that it doesn't work at all. That's obviously a big issue for a site that's all about news, where users will be more likely to search for a certain story that they've heard about or certain content they want to find. Another issue here is that we have this 404 error, which users will sometimes get for whatever reason, but we have a very unfriendly long string and really no helpful text on what happened or why it happened. So it's definitely recommended that more friendly text be put here. Sorry, the search functionality is not working right now. Check out these news stories in the meantime. Something like that. Always recommending different places they could go from the 404 page is really nice, or some suggested content would be great. And we'll try the newsletter sign up. So one of the things we noticed here, obviously the email is fake. That's good that they caught that, but it's always good to validate emails and things that people enter into form fields. But you can see not only have we opened a new tab, which is a bit unexpected, but all of the navigation and all of the website has gone away. So it's a little bit disjointed. I think users would sort of wonder what happened. And I don't think users would really understand exactly why the rest of the site went away. If you do enter a valid email address, it takes you to a page similar to this where it says, check your email to confirm the registration. So that's pretty normal, and that's fine. And then it has a button that says return to the site. So I think the recommendation here would be that instead of having a button that says return to the site, just keep them in the site the whole time, and reload this page with a congrats message or a thank you for registering message, but keep all of the navigation and footer and everything for users, so it's not such a disjointed experience. Okay, a couple other small things. Contact us page. The Contact Us page had a couple odd issues. I think the content is normal and fine, but we have what looks to be some kind of author information here, which is not something I think users would normally be used to seeing on a Contact Us page. It looks like it was made with some kind of CMS, and I would just remove that information. And similarly, we have comments on the Contact Us page, which is also pretty abnormal. The comments are closed, but I think it would be much better just to remove all of this information. Users don't really come here for opinions. They just want the contact information. All right. And I think that'll do it for Poynter. Let me take one more look at this story detail pages. Yeah, so one thing about the story detail pages I did want to point out before we finish is that we have actually a third method of sharing. So again, we definitely want to eliminate any kind of additional sharing methods and just stick with this method right here. And it's okay for buttons to be in here, but it should work the same as these buttons and not be a separate plugin or separate script or whatever's being used now. All right, well, that ends the review. There's also a written report that's generated for reviews like this, and that'll be provided to Poynter as well. Thanks for watching.